As most of you are probably aware, I do not subscribe to the belief that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election due to widespread voter fraud. I do believe that Bill Barr said there was fraud, but not on the scale that was enough to have changed the outcome of the elections. I've also interviewed several people who had been investigating voter irregularities, and I can even point to Steven Crowder, who pointed out questions relating to the 2020 election and voter addresses that raise questions. This is the challenge for everyone. If you believe that something bad happened in 2020 that negatively impacted the results, we need more than just questions, and we need a full-scale investigation. Now, there was an audit in Arizona. Data came out, and many people were like, Tim, why aren't you going through the data? We did. It was much of what we had already talked about on Timcast IRL, and all of it results in questions that need to be investigated, individuals that would need to be questioned, but not much more I can draw a conclusion on. Now, of course, you can look at all the data and come to your own conclusion, which brings me to 2,000 Mules, a new documentary from Dinesh D'Souza, arguing that mules, individuals engaged in ballot harvesting, had an impact, or there are questions around whether or not they did have an impact in several key states. Now, full disclosure, I have not seen the documentary, but that is not why I'm doing this segment to talk about the full contents of the documentary. I'm here to talk about the failures of the media, the obvious manipulations, and the fact that there's no real argument going on. Look, there are questions raised about people engaged in ballot harvesting, and we know this not from Dinesh D'Souza, but from James O'Keefe. James O'Keefe had a guy on camera talking about getting paid to do ballot harvesting. This stuff happens. In many states, it's illegal. In many states, it's not. What we would need is a coordinated investigation. We haven't had that. So, of course, until we do, there's going to be doubt on the right, because people on the right want to believe that Trump was on track to win his second term, and the left is going to deny it. But there's nothing substantive for me to latch onto. And the least effective thing ever are the people screaming censorship, the brigaders who are going like, Tim Pool refuses to talk about 2,000 mules. I got no problem talking about 2,000 mules. Now, here's what y'all might like. The media's desperate attempt to debunk a documentary that raises questions and asks for an investigation. This is the stupidest thing I have ever seen from the mainstream media, and it's backfiring. So congratulations, mainstream press. I just want to stress, with 2020, if you look at the full picture and how the media was reporting things and what was going on, a lot of what people believe is just wrong. And I have no problem saying it, despite, and however many people might get mad and not like it. There's one video where there is this voting center and people pull out boxes and then pull out ballots and run those ballots. And everybody started saying, where did those ballots come from? So I decided to watch the full video on high speed, mind you. And if you look at the full context of the video, you can actually watch them take ballots, put them in boxes, push them under the tables from throughout the day, and then pull them out later to run them through the machines. You want to make assumptions about what that means? Go ahead. But when they cut the video context, it will trick you into believing something that didn't happen. I believe the biggest mistake right now, and with this narrative on voter fraud, is that it is going to disenfranchise people months away, half a year away from one of the most consequential elections we're going to have in a long time. The midterms are coming up, and we need everyone to get out and vote. So every time these narratives come out that tell you that people are cheating and you can't win, I am frustrated by it. There's not enough evidence. We know there was the shadow campaign and all that stuff. What do they call it? The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Yo, they want to spit in your face and say stuff like this, fine. Time magazine said there was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Really? Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. The pact was formalized in a terse, little-noticed joint statement and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that happened. Here's what you don't need. What you don't need is this consistent claim that there are secret, fraudulent votes or whatever. This is what I'm trying to say. The narrative, I believe, is outright incorrect. They had this narrative where they were like, ballots made in China and servers in Germany. And I'm like, throw that all away. Ignore the noise that seeks to disenfranchise you. Ballot harvesting is simple. It's simple and it's illegal. And I think 2,000 Mules raises some questions. Nothing I can say definitively. In fact, that's my understanding from even the assessment of people who watched it. There's a ton of data and video surveillance footage that needs to be reviewed. And so they release this, questions are being asked. Okay, I can respect that. I'm not drawing a conclusion. I think I would warn people and say, do not believe, don't underestimate your enemy. I hate to say enemy in political context, but you should be operating under the assumption that Donald Trump was crushed definitively. Why? Because if you want to maximize your voter returns in 2022 and 2024, you must assume you lost because people don't like your guy. Now, maybe bad stuff happens, okay? That should be investigated. But if you go out with the sole mission to get as many votes as possible, you will win. Don't let this stuff demoralize you. Anyway, I digress. Here's what's happening. PolitiFact and many other outlets have issued these fact checks. The faulty premise of the 2,000 Mules trailer about voting by mail in the 2020 election. Let me show you this tweet from Polymath. Polymath is a marginally compelling and occasionally accurate, sometimes writer, engineer, cake baker. This person does not like Dinesh D'Souza, and they write on Twitter. I'm as far away as you can get from being an election truther, but someone at PolitiFact needs to recognize this fact check is terrible. It makes 2,000 Mules look more plausible than if they wrote nothing at all. All of the fact checks do. All they do is push the questions, and that's why I wonder if the blue checky journalists are putting out these garbage fact checks that only highlight the film. Who benefits? The people who are demoralized and told just before an election you can't win? Or the journalists who are trying to debunk the narrative? Let's read. Polymath says, some of this is bad editing. We don't need 400 words telling us that Dinesh D'Souza is a bad dude before you even start addressing the facts of the case. That looks to any normal reader like you're using ad hominem because you're not confident in your case. But some of this is just plain bad writing. Quote, or he goes on to say, true, the vote has, quote, geospatial info from Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but ignores that in many states it is legal to drop off a ballot on behalf of another voter. Okay, is it legal in those states? They don't tell you. When you look it up, it's obvious why they don't tell you. Because in those 5 states, only 2 allow even a caregiver to deliver a vote. The other 3 require a family member or the voter to do it. Why not say that? You lose so much credibility if I have to discover that myself. Polymath says, I don't believe the 2020 election was stolen, but my God, this fact check is absolute trash, a complete failure to convince the convincible, and so reliant on conjecture and assumption, it might as well be a satire written by D'Souza to promote his dumb movie. By the way, it is not clear. If it is not clear how I feel about this, D'Souza is a GD hack, scammer, shyster, and his every success drives me back to the bottle. Here's what I think. I look at locals and I see a $30 documentary that is mostly being watched by people who want to believe. And I say, okay, if you had real evidence to release, I think you should just release it. This is the most frustrating point for me. The film should be free. And then I stop and say, I want it to be free because if it's true that there are people engaged in ballot harvesting that need to be investigated, everyone should know about this. But I take a step back and there's a few points to be made in defense of Dinesh and the price of this film. The cell phone data cost millions of dollars. The production was likely very expensive in the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And we're all capitalists, man. I mean, we're allowed to make money off of our product. So I don't think calling out price is in any way discrediting of the film. And I would only say, as with anything, I encourage people to watch it. I know I haven't seen it. I have not yet seen it. I've only read a bit about it and watched some clips. There is some posts that have been made that went viral showing key highlights. I've seen some of those. And there are some breakdowns, like Cliff Notes versions of it. I should definitely watch it, and I think you should too. Any fact check that comes out only serves one purpose: to encourage people to read it. Now, this PolitiFact fact check is silly. They say the 2020 presidential election was secure, and evidence from state and federal officials and courts show no indication of widespread fraud. Okay, I got to stop you right there. For one, you're not convincing anybody. Just coming out and saying secure does nothing. In fact, I think it makes people less confident. Here's what frustrates me. I do not live in the same world as the Trump supporters who believe there was widespread fraud and Trump lost due to it. I just don't agree. You've long heard my narrative. When my friends who are apolitical were posting videos of them voting, I was shocked by this. Absolutely. So the only thing I can say is, in the absence of evidence, the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be correct. Now, I do think there are creepy things to be said, to be pointed out. Ballot harvesting does happen. Veritas has proven this. Was it enough to sway an election? That I don't know. Time magazine said there was a conspiracy. Well, that's kind of weird and creepy. Perhaps it should be investigated. Here's what I think. I believe there was collusion between powerful interests like Mark Zuckerberg, Democrats, and establishment Republicans to change laws because they knew that it would benefit them. Call that cheating, call that soft power, call it whatever you want. The fact is, this is politics. People dump money in dirty ways to influence people to vote, to either make it easier to vote or harder to vote. All that matters is I look at all of the data and people point out like the jump in ballots in the middle of the night. And I'm like, they wrote about this. They wrote that mail-in ballots weren't being tallied until the end of the day. You can call them liars. Fine. The point is, we need a legitimate investigation on the scale of like the Mueller probe or the Durham probe if we're going to have anything definitive coming out of this. Now, let me show you this fact checked from the Denver Post so we can talk about what their claims about Dinesh D'Souza in the film are and why they're debunking it. This is fact-checking 2000 Mules. The Denver Post writes, a film debuting in over 270 theaters across the country, across the United States, uses a flawed analysis of cell phone location data and ballot drop box surveillance footage to cast doubt on the results of the 2020 presidential election. I'm going to pause you right there. When they put flawed in, that made this an opinion piece, not a fact check. Let me stop right there and jump to Snopes as well. The AP saying the exact same thing. If you are to say flawed, you have become an opinion piece. You want to point out that they used cell phone data. Whether or not it's flawed or not is an opinion. Weird. Why would they do that? Let's read. Praised by former President Trump as exposing great election fraud, the movie called 2000 Mules paints an ominous picture suggesting Democrat-aligned ballot mules were supposedly paid to illegally collect and drop off ballots in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Okay, let me slow down there. If you are a proponent of the fraud narrative, I'm going to tell you your hurdle with people like me. For one, I was not a staunch Trump supporter. Staunch, is that the right word? I didn't vote for him in 2016. I came around at the end of 2020 because I liked Trump's new agenda, but I am not going to sit here and blindly just believe everything he says. If you want to convince moderate post-liberals that this is true, you need to overcome some very serious questions. Okay? They say it's based on faulty assumptions, anonymous accounts, and improper analysis of cell phone location data. Here's what I want to say. I hear this fraud narrative, and I say, okay, where's the evidence? It doesn't come out. I see questions. I see suspicious data. I've spoke with people like Matt Brainerd. I've actually verified some of the data he's presented as well. And I say, this is circumstantial evidence of potential wrongdoing. Was it enough to sway an election? No. Honestly, no. I don't know. I look at the data that comes out of Arizona. Much of the data we already did go through several times. And I say, okay, we need to actually, if you talk about double voting, it happens. There have been people arrested and charged for it. Recently, it was like a Trump supporter got arrested, voted for her mom or something like that, or her dead mom or something. I don't know. If you have a list of names, as people have produced saying, these people are registered in two different areas, okay, what you need to do is you need to get these people under oath and investigate. Fox News had a guy on who was an athlete. And he was, I think it was from Tennessee or Arizona or something, or he had been in one of the other states. And he was registered as having voted in both. I'm like, okay, well, there needs to be an actual investigation. So I respect the audits. But what happened after Arizona? Come on, I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying answer these questions for me as someone who doesn't live in that world. Cyber Ninjas vanishes. Where's the release? The data we saw was data we already had. They were looking for like watermarks and stuff. Apparently there was none. I don't know. There were a lot of wild claims that Trump would be reinstated, that he was the real president. None of that happened. So when 2000 Mules comes out and it's a new narrative on fraud, I say, okay, I'm willing to investigate and I reserve judgment. I won't make any definitive statements as to the veracity of the claims. But this is a new argument, a new theory. I know we knew, about the claims of ballot harvesting. I'm saying, but this is a shift in the narrative. Here's what they say. Claim 2,000 mules were paid to illegally collect ballots and deliver them to drop boxes in key swing states ahead of the 2020 presidential election. The facts. True the Vote didn't prove this. The finding is based on false assumptions about the precision of cell phone tracking data and the reasons that someone might drop off multiple ballots, according to experts. They want to say ballot harvesting, blah, blah, blah. They say, True the Vote has said it found some 2,000 ballot harvesters by purchasing $2 million worth of anonymized cell phone geolocation data. The pings that track a person's location based on app activity in various swing counties across 5 states. Then, by drawing a virtual boundary around a county's ballot drop boxes and various unnamed nonprofits, it identified cell phones that repeatedly went near both ahead of the 2020 election. Let's pause right there. I don't think that's a claim that there is proof of voter fraud. I think that is a claim of circumstantial evidence that should be looked into, or at the very least, probable cause. If it is true that cell phone data shows that someone came within a few meters of a nonprofit and a drop box multiple times, I think there should be an investigation. I don't think it proves anything. I think it raises questions. They go to mention that cell phone data can only get within a few meters or blah, blah, blah. They say experts say cell phone data, location data, even at its most advanced, can only reliably track a smartphone within a few meters, not close enough to know whether someone actually dropped off a ballot or just walked or drove nearby. So that doesn't debunk anything. If the criteria for a mule is that they went near an NGO and a drop box several times within a few meters, okay then, maybe we should ask these individuals. Do you know who they are? There's footage they've published of what appears to be fraud. Again, James O'Keefe found fraud. Does it mean the entirety of the election was stolen? No, but it does mean those people should be arrested and charged. I don't care if you're for Trump or for Biden or for whoever. Does mail-in voting make fraud easier? Yeah, oh, absolutely. I don't like the changes they made to all these laws and everything. But I'll point out, I don't play the definitive conspiracy game. And here's what's frustrating. The people who go online and just spam 2,000 mules nonstop, you hurt your cause. Sorry, that's the reality. I'll talk about the news. I'll talk about the claims. But the claims for now are, hey, we found some suspicious cell phone data. These individuals were going near these places several times. We should probably, take them in for some questioning. That's where we're at. That's where we are at. It is probable cause, which leads us to say a preliminary investigation. For people who come out and say it proves it, it doesn't. And these fact checks, technically correct. They say the claim that this happened. Well, I think there is circumstantial evidence suggesting it may be the case. The next thing we do is we look for hard evidence. Financial transactions. How about we do those investigations? I'd be fine with that. And if you discover it, I'd be like, wow, look at that. I do not appreciate zealousness in conspiracy theory. It makes it harder. I try to explain to people that if you come out and here's the example I love to use. They're turning the frickin' frogs gay, yells Alex Jones. Well, to a regular person, that sounds nuts. What? Well, Alex Jones was talking about something real. Atrazine was disrupting the endocrine systems of frogs. He then talked about it and then yelled, they're turning the frickin' frogs gay. And then you get a bunch of people who think Alex Jones is crazy because they don't know what he's talking about. You can't just take someone blindfolded, walk them to the edge of a cliff, and shove them off thinking they'll know how to pull the parachute or if they're wearing one. But if you take a person and say, I'm holding a parachute I am going to give to you. I would like you to put it on. Next, we're going to walk towards this cliff. You are going to jump off and then pull the parachute to land safely. They'll be like, that makes sense. If someone is blindfolded, you walk them to a cliff, take the blindfold off and say, have fun, and push him off, they'll think you just tried to kill him. They'll have no idea what your intention was. So the only thing I can say is this. Watch the film. And then if they've presented strong enough evidence to make you believe, well, that's on you. I've not yet seen it, okay? So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying the fact checks are backfiring on the fact checkers. But then my question is, why would they do that? Are regular people going to see this and then be like, okay, it must be fake? Or is this creating brand value for Dinesh D'Souza and his film and spreading the narrative that there was fraud? Having worked in nonprofits, I will tell you, when they come out and say that you can't win because people are cheating and then people choose not to vote, you lose. Look at Georgia. There are videos of people saying, what's the point? And then the Democrats won. Now, maybe in the long run, that was a good thing because it makes it look like everything is the Democrats' fault. But all I can say is what frustrates me the most about any fraud narrative is we just had several primaries. All right. Trump's endorsed candidates are winning. We need everyone to go out and vote. You want to believe this stuff? Fine. Just please go out and vote. Don't tell people not to vote. Tell people to go out and vote. Get everyone you can to participate. Everybody's got to go out and vote. And the primaries are coming up. So look, shadow campaign. I don't know. YouTube says they'll ban you if you claim there was widespread voter fraud or whatever. I don't know if there needs to be fraud in the sense that people are claiming there's fraud. Time magazine is making the claim there was a conspiracy. Here's what I think. You want to say rigged? You want to call it whatever you want? I think a dirty game is politics. I think people spend large sums of money to win these games. I think the establishment Republicans and Democrats did not want Trump to win. I think laws were changed that ultimately ended up benefiting Democrats, but that is all part of the game, whether you like it or not. If you believe that elections are going to be as simple as I cast my vote and we're done, you're wrong. Smear campaigns, lobbying for voter rule changes, purging voter rolls versus preserving dead people on voter rolls. The left says the right is trying to disenfranchise people. The right says the left has got, false names on these rolls. Everybody is fighting in every possible way to win. And in the end, Donald Trump lost. You can say he didn't really lose. No. Who's sitting in the White House right now? That's who won. Everything else is politics. So, I am not saying 2000 Mules is wrong. Not at all. I think there's interesting questions being raised about the cell phone data, and I believe when they bring that up and show it, they're probably right. Surveillance footage showing people dropping multiple ballots probably exists. There have been people on the right and the left who have illegally voted. It happens. Those people should be investigated. We should start unraveling the threads and see where it brings us and not just make definitive statements as to what we think it means when a handful of people are seen on video doing something. Voter fraud's a real thing. The left tries to claim it doesn't exist. That's stupid. Widespread enough and on a scale to overturn a presidential election? I don't know if I believe that over the fact that people just hate Donald Trump. Maybe you don't want to believe it. Maybe people don't want to believe that there are a lot of people in this country who hate Trump, but they do. And the media radicalizes them. So the reality is you need to be spreading the message. You need to be explaining to people what they need to vote for. You need to be calm, reasonable, and you need to guide them carefully and slowly. These kind of narratives do not help people. If you want to convince a regular person something bad happened, some may be convinced by a documentary about like 2000 Mules, no doubt. But a lot of people are going to be like, I don't believe you. Show them something simple. Show them the Time magazine article. Just show them this. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.